Ah, Centaurworld, home of wonderful songs, lovable characters, and a villain so horrifying that they had a whole creepy lullaby just for him. I mean, look at this guy! Now that's what I call straight out of the abyss of cartoon nightmares when it comes to villainry. I mean, who wouldn't want him as the villain? He's big, powerful, destructive, and murderous. Everything you want in a villain and more. But what if I were to tell you that the Nowhere King isn't a villain, but a victim? A victim of magic, otherworldly travel, and a broken heart brought on by one woman. Well, that, my dear watchers, is what I hope to shed light on today with my theory of the true history of Centaurworld and the origin of the Nowhere King. Hello everyone, and welcome to Wolf Tales, where storytelling runs wild. I gotta say, out of all the works that have come out this year, Centaurworld has gotta be one of the best. It isn't often I find a show that is incredibly well developed and planned out like this one is. The characters, songs, stories, and world are a treat to see again and again. For those who have no idea what I'm talking about, let me give a brief explanation. Centaurworld is about a warhorse who is thrown into a colorful world of rainbows and magic after an artifact goes haywire in her world. Desperate to get back to her rider, Horse teams up with a bunch of centaurs called Zulius, Glendale, Wamawink, Chad, and Durpleton to make her way across the Rainbow Road to the portal between the worlds. Filled with action, heartbreak, and heartwarming moments, lovingly displayed by a dazzling set of animations, Centaurworld is a phenomenal show that I would recommend everyone take a look at. But amongst all the fantastical aspects of Centaurworld, there's one part that's confused and intrigued viewers from the very first moment the strange lullaby came to play. And it is the Nowhere King. Considered to be the main antagonist of the series, the Nowhere King is a bit of a conundrum in Centaurworld. On the one hand, the show paints him in a pretty clear light of being a villain, but on the other hand, we don't know his reasons for being the way he is, and that's not the only thing we don't know. We don't know his identity, why he blames the woman, and as Zulius puts it, if the woman and him have a history with each other. These are just a few of the many questions that have puzzled me since the series premiere, and it got me thinking. So I decided to do a deep dive into the series and look at every part I could find. So I looked and I looked and I looked, and after a lot of time of looking, I think I got it. I think I got an idea of who the Nowhere King is, how he came to be, and where the story has been and where it will go from here. Now, obviously, as a warning, this is just a theory and it's my own observations I'm making. I could be very wrong and the show could go in a very different way when season 2 comes out, but this is my best guess and I just want to have fun with it. So sit back and relax as we go over this theory of the ancient lore of Centaurworld and the true origins of the Nowhere King. And what better place to start off than answering the simple question of who really is the Nowhere King and the magical woman. The Nowhere King is a creature unlike anything we've seen in the show. I mean, we've seen fish people, talking leaves, talking apples, and even strange miniature creatures we have no idea what happens to. But the Nowhere King is an unusual subject, even by Centaurworld standards. I mean, just look at him! Inky design, a wispy tail, a bee or wasp body, spider-like legs, a deer skull, a floofy chest mane. The Nowhere King didn't match any kind of style that was found in the humanoid nor the centaur world. I mean, the magical woman is obviously from the humanoid world, but where on earth could the Nowhere King be from? This stumped me for a while until I saw episode 10, The Rift Part 2, and watched the ending scene again. Setting the scene, we see that the Nowhere King has somehow gone onto the humanoid side of the rift and seems to approach a large building-like castle. In this castle, he nods to two minotaurs who seem to know him, which indicates that either he's their boss or leader, and he enters into a large throne room. This throne room seems to be run down and destroyed like most of the humanoid world, but has a few remaining objects. A picture on the wall, a lush chair that looks like a throne, some tapestries and pillars, and a carving. A carving that seems to depict a grand moment of peace and harmony between the Centaurworld people and the humans. Holding hands, they gaze happily at a deer centaur holding hands with a young girl. Now, this makes sense because we know that at some point, humans and centaurs did live in harmony, though interestingly, we are never told how this happened or if there were any grand events that happened in between. We know that this harmony lasted long enough that they built castles in Centaurworld and humans possibly were living there for some time. We also know that this is very ancient history because most of the creatures don't remember it, but they do remember the Minotaurs. And finally, we know that from the Bear Tar's figurines as well as his songs, we know that the Minotaurs, who we can assume were sent by the Nowhere King, appears to have invaded and caused mass destruction. But after all of this, we never know what either sparked the Union or helped it grow to unbelievable levels until episode 10. Now, judging from the carving and comparing them to our cast, we can guess that this woman is the magical woman. As well, considering where this carving is in the castle, we can also guess that the magical woman was either a princess or a young queen. This painting in the throne room we can guess is her mother, who might have passed, so either the land was being ruled by her father the king, or herself. Regardless, it is clear that this woman must have been at some point a high-ranking member of the human society. We can also see that in the carving, this deer figure and her are in the triangle. So we can guess this is the rift, and seems to indicate the union of them seemed to either help the rift form in the first place, or seems to have made things even better between the two worlds. Now, while I believe that the two worlds probably have been set up for a while before these two came together, I do think that they did make a big impact with their union. Now, you may also be thinking that while this carving tells us who the magical woman is, how does this tell us who the Nowhere King is? Well, my dear watchers, I believe that this deer centaur, this doe holding the magical woman's hand, is none other than the Nowhere King. Now, before anyone shouts and complains that the Nowhere King can't be a doe because he's got antlers, that's a fair point. The Nowhere King has a massive set of antlers, and from what we know, female deer don't have antlers. So it would seem that this can't be correct because of the lack of antlers on the carving of the doe's head. Except for one little thing in episode 10, The Rift Part 2. In it, our group of heroes eventually defeat the Nowhere King temporarily by jamming the key turned spear into his neck. After which he coughs up a copious amount of ink and then absorbs it back into the skull. When we look at the skull here, we realize the skull is smooth. Not with two bumps at the back that we would see the antlers connecting to the skull. This means this is not the skull of a buck, but the skull of a doe. This matches the idea that the mural is our original being of the Nowhere King, because if he was a buck, why wouldn't he have antlers on his skull when he's defeated? And if we believe that this carving is the Nowhere King, we know that they do draw antlers on their people concerning the painting in episode 5, which means that this doe on the mural with the connection of the magical woman has to be our Nowhere King. On top of that, we can tell that something changed this doe into this form because in episode 10, we see the Nowhere King expelling the ink that makes up his inky form. It's almost like the creators, besides making a creepy shot, are trying to show that the ink is poisonous to the Nowhere King, as if the ink form is not what the Nowhere King is supposed to be. Like he's supposed to be a normal centaur who's been corrupted by this inky magic, which leans more into the point that the Nowhere King is the doe in the carving. But even though we have a pretty good sense of who our two mysterious beings are, this doesn't tell us much besides that. We still don't know how they fell apart, and why the Nowhere King became the way he is. But I have a hunch of where we can go next to find our answers. Because you see, I believe the answer to both of these questions involves the magical woman and her use of a forbidden form of magic: necromancy. Magic, for the most part, can be performed by every single centaur in Centaurworld. It makes up every part of the world and for the most part appears cutesy in design. We know that magic in this world also affects people who come in it, like Horse, who after some time will make them match like the other residents of Centaurworld. While we do see Horse eating food and doing a lot of grand adventures in Centaurworld, it appears to be only when you embrace the values of Centaurworld that you actually do transform. This is proven when we look at Season 2's trailer. The show is depicting traditional centaurs of a humanoid top and a horse bottom. However, while we know magic is accessible to all residents, we also know that only shamans wield more serious and powerful magic, and currently there are only 5. These 5 shamans are Water Baby, with a wide variety of natural magics, the Tree Tars, who grant wishes and help plants grow, Johnny Tea Time, who for the most part seems to have levitation magic and super strength, the Whale Tar, who seems to affect emotions, and as well sea life, and finally, the Mole Tars, who shun magic. Keep this in mind for later, by the way. Overall, most shamans seem natural magic users except for one: Johnny Tea Time. See, when Horse and her friends are fleeing Qatar Valley and are stealing the key piece, Johnny's eyes change from black like everyone else to having green irises. Then he blazes green after he unleashes his strange power, and they stay a solid green. Now, this is important because no character in the show has color in their eyes except for 3. The big Tree Tar shaman, who has a hollow face and purple eyes, Trevor, who's a demon and has red eyes, and, you guessed it, the Nowhere King, who has flaming green eyes. Now, while this may be a stretch, it seems the creators are trying to link them together, which makes sense. Both Johnny and the Nowhere King share a similar color scheme to each other when Johnny unleashes his magic, and Johnny seems to let Horse go even though he warns her about the Nowhere King. It's as if Johnny somehow wants Horse to go to the Nowhere King, like he's serving the Nowhere King from within Centaurworld. When examining the show to see if there are other aspects of the show that have a green and black theme to it, one of the few parts we see with this combination is in episode 2, Fragile Things, with the tornado. Tornadoes are dangerous events in Centaurworld that are seeming to be made of lost souls cycloning around trying to get more souls to add to their storm. They're massive, move like normal horses and centaurs, and seem to have inescapable death traps at the core of their being. Kind of similar, if we think about it, to the Nowhere King, who uses green and black in his scheme, has ink that absorbs souls into in episode 10, and is themed around death. When comparing them as well, we also see that possibly the Nowhere King is made up of multiple souls because of the plethora of inky arms that pull the spear out of him in episode 10. The only difference between the two is that the tornado appears to be a natural event in Centaurworld, but the Nowhere King doesn't seem like he was in this form by birth. He was made into this form by who we can guess was the woman. Remember, he said in episode 10, "You made me what I am, but that's okay. I forgive you." If we believe he's telling the truth and she really did do this to him, then why would he be gentle with her when he saw her? Shouldn't he be trying to rip her apart or assimilate her like he did with the others? In fact, if we think back about that scene in episode 10, doesn't that seem a little strange to you? The Nowhere King for the first half of episode 10 is desperate to go through the blue door. The door which we know has Centaurworld in it. Even though at one point Water Baby is the only one guarding the yellow door, which we know is the humanoid world, he just wants the blue door. Now, we could assume that's because he thinks that the others are weaker and he has a better chance to go through that door, but he proves that he can subdue all of them. It's not a power issue. So what could be so special on the blue door side that he wants? Well, it's because he knows there's something on that side that's not in the yellow door. His love, the magical woman. He has been separated from his love for I don't know how long, and he's desperate to get back to her. And we can guess it's the woman and not the key, because he doesn't seem interested in getting the key once she's in here. When we finally see the woman come through the door, the Nowhere King acts differently. He lets everyone go, he shoves them to the side, and he solely focuses on the woman. He becomes quiet and soft with her, cooing to her almost, until she changes the artifact into a weapon, at which point he does get angry, but not nearly as bad as when he was facing the others. He doesn't seem to want to inflict harm on her, and even seems to try to tempt her to talking with him. Now, there is a good chance that he's just trying to gaslight her and lie to her about everything, but it's interesting when he's right in front of her and he could overpower her and assimilate her or even rip the key from her hand, he bows his head to give her the perfect shot to kill him. And when she does have that perfect shot, what does she do? She puts the weapon down and stays close to him. And the Nowhere King in turn looks up to her, covers the portal in ink, the thing he was desperate to go through just moments earlier, and holds everyone, including the woman, in place. As if he's saying to the herd, let us talk, and to the woman, you stay here. Now, that doesn't exactly make him innocent. He still produced genocidal wars and tons of horrible other acts, but it's interesting to think about his reaction, especially when faced to the woman just seems guilty and sad about what she's looking at. So if we roll with the idea that the magical woman did actually do something to the original form of the Nowhere King, then what did the woman do? What could she have done to change the doe from a normal centaur to a sadistic, warmongering monster? Well, that, dear watchers, is where necromancy comes into play. See, oftentimes necromancy is considered to be a corrupted or evil form of magic because it breaks the natural law of how things work in the world. Life and death are some of the purest forms of magic in most stories, and breaking that flow results in disastrous consequences. I mean, just look at Salem from Ruby, Lewis Creed from Pet Sematary, and pretty much any horror story revolving around it. As in most stories, character A is revived by character B and slowly becomes corrupted. Character B is usually spared because of the magic they have, and character A in time becomes a truly evil being. When we look at the woman, her magic appears to be powered by something unnatural compared to the shaman's magic. It's red and it's violent, very different from the cutesy stuff we see before. The green magic that the Nowhere King is connected to appears to also be tainted or corrupted magic when we look at how Johnny Tea Time's magic changes when he unleashes it. So if the magical woman did go and try to gain a magical boost from another figure because she's humanoid and doesn't naturally have magic, then who could have given her this magic? Who in the show has a connection with death, have a high amount of magic, and is connected to the color red? Why, none other than our local friend, Trevor. Though Trevor could have been just a throwaway gag because of a song, Trevor, in his natural state, seems to be a Lovecraftian-inspired being who seems to fit our bill. His offerings are flaming giggle cakes and skulls, so death and violent energy are checked off here. He's strong, and his color scheme is a lot of red. He seems to be the perfect candidate for blessing our young royal with this evil magic, but again, he could just be a throwaway gag for a song. But let's say for the sake of the theory that either Trevor or an eldritch being did provide our mysterious woman with magic, then we seem to have an answer to our theory of who they are, what happened, but not why this happened. Why would the woman need to learn necromancy, and why would her love become corrupted? Well, the answer to that is simple. Her lover died far too young after being murdered in cold blood. Now, we don't know specifically how the doe died. She could have died from a disease or an accident or something else, but I don't think it was as simple as that. As Water Baby said, war tactics aren't really needed in Centaurworld because it's a very pacifist nation. The human world, on the other hand, we know is very violent. I mean, we can just look at how many wars we've had in history as proof of that. Sometimes wars can be based on religion or land disputes, while sometimes they can be based on alliances or race issues. While I don't think religion or land disputes are too big an issue in Centaurworld to have made a fight happen, I do think closed-minded humans being spurred on from the aggression they felt about a union between the two races could have done it. Now, obviously, these humans couldn't kill their princess because, I mean, she's their royal. They'd get in big trouble. But they could try and kill a member of another group, the doe. So they do it, and the woman tries to revive her but can't with her normal magic, so that would mean she'd need to go to another being to get it, which would work, but then something seems off. The revived being would seem angrier and more destructive, and just not herself. Pulling on necromancy-themed literature we see in other cases, like Stephen King's Pet Sematary, where we see that individuals buried in the Micmac burial ground were possessed by the Wendigo, we can pull on that for this work. Let's say that those who were revived by the means that the woman did were possessed by something to make them lose their morals and just do things they normally wouldn't do, like killing people. The woman would see this as a betrayal for this supposed love to kill people she cared about for reasons she doesn't understand. She'd be freaked out, and she would think that the revival did something to her, or maybe this was just what was in here from the beginning, and she'd feel guilty about bringing this on the worlds. And in the other case, the being who's revived, or the Nowhere King in this case, would be angry and frustrated about everything that happened to him. And so he would not hold back on his anger or his frustrations, and he'd just let it go on his people. He would amass an army, he would destroy towns like Wamawink's home, and still not feeling complete, he would want the whole worlds to burn for what happened. He would want to take out the shamans that didn't help him, and keep killing everyone except for those who bowed to his whim. Overall, we would then have two people, one feeling betrayed, one feeling angry at what she did, and both leading to the genocide of both the centaurs and humans. So now, with all of this in mind, finally, and I do mean finally, we can make the predictions of what happened in the past and how it will affect the future. So our story starts off where humans and centaurs form the rift and the worlds and unity has begun, with a close connection being made on both sides. Years pass, and eventually the princess or a young queen from the humanoid world comes through to Centaurworld and meets a kind doe. The doe is sweet and fun and makes her life whole, while the human helps the doe feel better about herself. In time, the two realize they love each other and spend as much time as they can with each other, uniting, through marriage, both kingdoms. Perhaps they even had a family at the time that they were making a lullaby for, or perhaps they merely just spent a lot of time with each other and wished to start a family. Everyone's happy, except for a small group of people that start to build unrest amongst this whole unity thing, but the princess says it's fine and there's nothing to worry about. This is, of course, until one day when, to her horror, her love is killed by a bunch of humans when she went off in to see the humanoid world, who murder her love in cold blood. Horrified, she demands that the perpetrators be caught and brought to justice, which they do, but it doesn't help her. She still is angry about what happened, and as she buries her doe, she wants some way to bring her back. She cannot be separated from her love, and she doesn't want to. So she goes to every single shaman in the world to seek help, but all of them tell her no. The tree shamans even tell her that this is what she wants, but this isn't what she needs. So she tries desperate to learn magic of any kind, but because her heart and her mind won't open up to the ideals of Centaurworld, she can't learn the magic. Eventually, getting desperate, she finds that there's a magical source from a creature named Trevor and goes to see him about gaining his knowledge. She promises that she'll follow him and his teachings and do whatever he wants, so long as he brings back her love. So Trevor either revives her love himself and changes him into this strange, gooey figure, or Trevor gives her the means to revive her love herself, but says that she'll need things like souls and other items. If it's the latter, she gathers souls and she gathers the items and brings back her love, and either is in a semi-necrotic state, but her original body, or the gooey form of the Nowhere King we know now. She's happy and everything's fine, and eventually, the woman tells the Nowhere King about her journey to get him where he is. This leads the Nowhere King to grow angry, but the woman tries to tell him it's fine and to let it go. Unfortunately for her, however, he can't. Because not only is he still angry about what happened, the abomination of nature frightens everyone who sees him, and many respond aggressively to this display of corrupted magic. In turn, the Nowhere King lashes out and attacks others. The princess, now fearful of why her love is acting this way, goes off to seek aid to try and help her mate's mental state, while the Nowhere King discovers that he does have a strange form of magic. With that magic, he uses it to create the first Minotaurs, which, ironically, when breaking down the words, means Bulls of Minos or Bulls of Kings. Eventually, things get way worse as the Nowhere King starts to absorb other centaurs and their magic and claims war on both sides. The woman, now horrified, runs away from her mistake, and the Nowhere King goes on a crusade to bring her back and burn the world. He goes off with his army to level group after group, and a song is made for him describing how death always comes where he walks. The tribes also realize that his minotaurs cannot be killed, at least on Centaurworld, because they are revived not that long after. One by one, the clans fall to the Nowhere King or meet another gruesome fate. The Moltars, seeing that magic and surface dwellers have defied the laws of nature and have become corrupt, go deep underground and hide away. The tree shamans and Wamawink's herd try to fight the Nowhere King but are practically wiped out until either the tree shamans bow to the Nowhere King and are spared, or he leaves them that way to set an example. The Cathars bow to the Nowhere King, and Johnny Teatime possibly pledges allegiance to him, which is why the Nowhere King gives him a bit of his corrupted magic. Waterbaby's tribe is wiped out, so she runs desperately to try and find a way to fix this, which she would learn could possibly be the woman. And then finally, the merfolk tars and the whale tars hide away in the water as their leader feels ashamed of not being able to do anything because the fight is out of water. Meanwhile, for the humans, the Nowhere King sends a plethora of forces to try and wipe them out, including minotaurs who go to ravage the land. On top of this, he starts to make new destructive things to aid him in his conquests, possibly including the tornadoes, which he uses the dead souls of fallen enemies to form a death trap cyclone to wipe out any remaining tribes he can't get to first. Once Waterbaby finds the woman hiding and afraid of her mistakes, Waterbaby pushes the princess to come with her and help her take down the Nowhere King, or at least seal him away for now. They devise a plan and use either a key or make the key themselves and go off to seal the Nowhere King in the rift between the worlds. So the princess goes into the human world and either gives her piece of the key to her allies or tells them what she's going to do before trying to lead the Nowhere King into the rift. It works, and after she fights him for a bit, she eventually subdues him enough to throw her piece or give her piece to the side of the humanoids and seal the door forever. She then goes back into Centaurworld, saddened by what's happened, and leaves her love stuck in the rift. She then gives the pieces to the different members of the shamans, and Water Baby tries desperately to rally them up to fight, but they're done. They don't want to die anymore, and they just want to go live their lives protecting their people. In time, things get a little better, and Wamawink, who was orphaned at a young age by the Minotaurs, decides to take as many centaurs as she can and gives them a safe home. Eventually, she does try to become a shaman, but it doesn't work out, and so she just keeps the bubble up and keeps all of her friends safe and protected. Meanwhile, the princess stays with Water Baby, who's now her only friend, and the Nowhere King waits in the void with either his Master Trevor or another controlling him, wishing destruction on both worlds. The song is sung to remind people about who is stuck in the void, and Water Baby hopes for someone, or some horse, to come and fix the mistake of the past, to bring back peace to the worlds and unite them yet again. Whether violence or kindness is needed to solve this issue is hard to say, but what is clear is that regardless of what will happen, it will need to be Horse who will break the curse once and for all and bring an end to the Nowhere King and the princess's tragic tale. But what do you think? Do you agree with my theory, or do you have a different one? Let me know in the comment below what you thought, and remember to subscribe and like the video to help the channel grow. As well, 2 quick reminders. You can still post your questions for the Q&A video on the actual announcement video in the comments, as well as since the holiday season is coming, there is going to be no new review videos until February. The Q&A video doesn't count as that's what will be posted in December, but then we will not be posting any more videos until February because we use January to try and get a backlog for us. Thank you to each and every person for doing such an amazing job in responding to the videos, making comments on them, subscribing, and liking. It really makes me smile as we see people responding to the videos, and is why I do these videos in the first place. So thank you to each and every one of you for keeping the channel going. For now, this has been Silver Starling. See you next time you want to run with the pack.